Hello, welcome to Patty and Robert's YouTube channel, where we talk about online freelancing and remote work. Today, we're going to talk about setting rates. Hey, why is it important to set the right rate? Well, your rate tells the client how you value yourself. So if you set a really low rate, it's basically telling the client you're inexperienced and they probably won't want to hire you. On the other hand, if you have an exorbitant rate, it may suggest that you're not using the right tools to do the project efficiently. And there are people out there that have better ways of doing it, in which case you may want to look at retooling or looking for other services. But most people get confused about what to charge. And the go-to for most people is, well, I'll just do what the client is asking. And that's sometimes helpful if you've got an experienced client. But a lot of times clients don't know how much your service is worth, and they're expecting you to tell them. And they'll look at the proposals, and it may be a lot higher than what they put in their budget. So how do you set your rates? Now, rate setting is a complex thing. There are MBA programs that have entire specialties on pricing and costing. Obviously, you don't want to get an MBA to price your freelancing. So we'll look at some shortcuts to help you get started. There are two basic approaches to pricing. One is cost-based pricing, and the other is value or market-based pricing. Cost-based pricing, sometimes called bottom-up pricing, the approach focuses on what it's going to cost you to provide the service. So all the costs that you incur to work, as well as the time you spend working, and then the cost for any tools that you need and the cost for training. It determines the minimum that you can afford to charge. This type of calculation is often used for fixed price proposals where you need to look at what the work is, determine how much time you're going to spend, and then any tools that you need. So it's a good starting point. But it can also provide a basis for setting your base rate by looking at your expenses for an entire year. Value-based or market-based pricing focuses on what the client's willing to pay for your service. Big companies use several techniques to figure this out. Competitive analysis, they'll look at what other people are charging. And we'll talk about that a little more. Focus groups, they'll bring people in and say, hey, here's this new product, would you buy it if it would cost X or Y? A/B testing, where particularly for online services, they'll charge one price in Texas and another price in Arkansas, and they'll see what people are willing to pay for their service. They can also try incremental price increases where they'll start at a lower rate and continue raising it until it gets to the point where they're seeing a drop off in sales. So there's a lot of analytics that can go into this. The result, though, is usually much higher than cost-based pricing. So it's something that it's worth doing. Most freelancers who are doing value-based pricing focus on what their competitors are charging. So let's dive a little deeper into the cost-based approach. The approach focuses on how much it costs to deliver. So you add up all your expenses related to freelancing for the entire year. So that may include fixed costs like your home, your internet, a percentage of the electricity, basically what you would put on your taxes, the cost of finding work. So how much time do you spend on average to find work? and any tools that you may need to purchase on a subscription. So if you buy Grammarly or have a paid copy of ChatGPT, that would be included. Most people have MS Office, and it's got to be paid for somewhere. Once you've figured out all those expenses, you need to determine the minimum income that you need to get in a year to make freelancing worthwhile. I mean, obviously, it's not worth it if all you're doing is covering your expenses. So, what would you say is the point at which it's no longer worth it? So, that's the minimum income for the year that you need. Then you determine how many hours you plan to work. You can work full time, which most companies use 2,000 hours as the basis for full time. That's 40 hours a week times 50 weeks. That gives you 2 weeks vacation. So most freelancers work less. So you need to come up with what's reasonable for you. So then you add the expenses and the desired income together, and then divide by the total number of hours that you expect to be working. The result is the minimum hourly rate that you should charge. Most most people wind up charging more than their cost, so they have a little profit. Now, what's the market-based approach? The easiest way for freelancers to do this is to see what others are charging. You can become a client. Any freelancer can do this. You just add a client account to your freelancing account, and then you can search for people that provide the same service and see what their base rate is. So that gives you a starting point. Another way to do it is to look on specific jobs. With a paid Upwork subscription, you can look at what freelancers are bidding on the jobs. So you search for postings that you might bid on, and then look at the highest, lowest, and median bids for that job. Now, in general, you don't want to go the lowest because that's people that are just trolling for jobs and putting a minimum price, hoping that somebody will jump at it. As I say, you can't always trust the client's cost, but that's a starting point. So most people bid somewhere between the median and the highest bids, so they get a sense for the rate. Another approach is simply to try increasing your rate over time. Use Look at what other people are charging, go in low, and then start increasing your rate, and see if you get more, which sometimes you do because, as I said, good clients expect good freelancers to charge more. And sometimes you get to the point where you're just charging too much. So as a starting point, here's some rates that Upwork listed for 2024, the end of the year. They haven't published the 2025 one yet. Writers, $30 to $40 an hour. Obviously depends on the specialty. Web developers charging $50 to $60 an hour, and data analysts, $55 to $65 an hour. You can use these rates as a starting point to help you with your bidding. So some things to consider about setting your rates. As I said at the beginning, your rate tells the client how you value yourself. And so don't be afraid to charge more because your client expects you to charge more if you're a good freelancer. Disregard lowball bids on proposals. There are a lot of freelancers who are not qualified to be bidding at all, but they go and troll, bidding on dozens or hundreds of jobs with a really lowball bid, hoping that some client will jump. And there are some clients that'll go for the lowest rate. In my experience, those clients are not generally the ones you want to work for because they'll try and lowball you on a lot of other things as well. So you want to look for good clients that will pay a reasonable rate. Um, you should also disregard the client's asking rate when it's impossibly low. If it seems reasonable, use it as a starting point. But a lot of times clients just put a placeholder in. I've seen, a fixed price for $100 for a job that takes 500 hours to do. Well, obviously, nobody who's realistic is going to bid that low. So think about it before you bid and don't just bid whatever the client is asking. So I hope that gives you some ideas on how to set your rates. And join us next time when Patty will talk about writing proposals that get noticed by understanding client needs. So until then, have a great rest of your week.